All right, everybody, another day in the shop, another day working on SoccerMom. Pretty much getting down to some of our last few things, although we did kind of decide on something we hadn't really planned for until this morning, and that is we're getting rid of the diaper and going to build a belly pan. So, show you how we're going to do that. We've already got some metal sheared and the pieces worked up. But the main reason for this video is going to be our street fuel system that we are going to be developing today. So it's got to fit up in this hole right here. You may see we've got some T-bolt clamps. Well, of course, the trunk floor's been cut out of this car, so there's not any kind of factory mounts for a fuel tank. So we've got a little bit of work to do there with making our fuel tank bolt up in the car, but we also want to make it easily removable. So I'll show you what we've got going on and some of the ideas we've got. We did a little bit of work off camera. You know, just happens. We were thrashing on the car. Actually, the car runs again too. Kimber and I got the intake put back on last night. You see all that's tidied up. Up there. So pretty well got a good start on our fuel system. For the street side, the race side is all back good to go. Got Sean's car over in the lift. Getting ready for it to go to the track tomorrow as well. So yeah, last day to crank, at least before we go test. And then we'll have Thursday, Friday, Saturday for any last minute adjustments that we hope we don't have to make. And we're gonna break in our big mud tires. But stay tuned and I'll show you what we got going on with the fuel cell. All right, so on to our fuel cell. See what we've done here is we've made some saddle mounts. And obviously they're just barely welded now. The old rollover valve was here on this corner, so we've moved that to the middle of the tank, which should make it to where whether you're braking and the fuel goes forward or you're accelerating and the fuel goes backwards, it doesn't expose the rollover valve or the vent to any kind of fuel. If it's on one corner and your tank is really full, well, if it's on the front corner and you hit the brakes, the fuel's gonna wanna splash out of the vent. If your vent is on the back of your tank, you accelerate and it's going to try to come out of the vent, so we don't want that. So we've moved that forward, and yeah, we know normally this is at the back and the sump is at the back, but we're not racing with this setup. This is only for driving down the road, some burnouts maybe. I mean, has anybody ever done a burnout with a trailer? I mean, it sounds like something just totally uncalled for, but I think it's gonna happen. Yeah. So anyways, we made some block offs for these. Will got all that done for me, and we're gonna wire up our fuel sender for it. We're also gonna mount the regulator right here to the cell, and for the old fill cap, we're gonna use that to mount the fuel pump to. So that'll come out as a module. We'll be able to work on everything in there. We've actually epoxied the ring to the back of or to the inside of the tank here so that these kind of stay in place. We've got to drill and put a fill cap somewhere over here where we'll be able to access it from a panel that we'll take out in the trunk, which we'll show you that later as well. But it's time for us to get to work. I'm gonna jump on doing some welding on this thing. See, we've got some gussets that are gonna weld here. Actually, I guess it goes that way. It goes on there some way. You'll see in the time lapse. See you in a second. Well, we're kicking into this time lapse with welding on the patches for where we cut out the old vents. And not only did we think it was a better idea to move the vent more towards the center of the tank, they were also in the way of the bars that are under the floor with where we were mounting the fuel cell. So kind of a dual purpose relocation there, necessary evil for what we were doing with this tank. And this is a 17-gallon tank, which hopefully will get us from track to track without too much hassle with having to stop and refill the fuel a bunch. It is a very small engine, so hopefully we'll get, we're hoping for somewhere around 15 miles to the gallon on pump gas. But we'll see if that all works out. And now I'm welding the gussets for the saddle mounts, which if you didn't put it together with what I showed under the car, those little clamshells go around a roll bar, and then we use a T-bolt clamp to attach the saddle-shaped tube to the roll bar, and it's nice and easy to install, nice and easy to remove. It's got a good solid connection, kind of similar to how top fuel cars hold their engines in, but we're holding a fuel cell in, so that should work fine. We also did some reinforcements on the front mounts, which I'm welding on, and it's just a 1/4 inch thick 90-degree gusset. We hang off the front, drill a hole in, and that's going to go to a strap that attaches up to the frame, which you might be able to see later in the video. All right, well, even though I'm really bright from the reflection off my neighbor's building, you guys probably saw we got all the brackets welded to the fuel cell. So this saddle will attach to the bar that goes across the back of the car. This bracket here, we're going to have a piece of flat bar that goes up to the chassis, which we still have to do that. And I've got to weld a bolt to the chassis, and then what we tried to do is, spread the load out a little bit, both with that gusset as well as support it. Because you think about, at least I think about, a lot of times fuel cells are sitting on trunk floors. I want to make sure the cell is very well supported on the bottom of it, since we're going to be hanging it instead of laying it on top of the trunk floor. The only part I think it may fail could be on one of these edges, the welded edges, but I think it'll survive, this drag and drive event. Hopefully some more, because we're going to leave it in the car unless we're trying to take all the weight back out of it and go real fast again. But Will's done a good job fabbing us up a belly pan. So we can't figure out why we haven't done that long before now. Maybe we thought it was going to be a bigger fabrication project or something. But that's almost done. I'm about ready to start fabricating the mount for the fuel pump, which is going to be based off of this plate. And then we also need to, probably what we'll do is we'll hang the fuel cell again so that we can figure out where we're going to drill a hole for the fill. Make sure we clear everything on the all the braces, because there is a cross brace. Actually, no, they run this way. So there's a cross brace in here somewhere. Make sure we miss that with the filler. And then once we do that, we can fabricate the fuel pump mount. I'm going to mount the regulator right to the front edge of the tank so that it'll all come out. We'll probably even put the relay for the fuel pump right there too. So once we take it out, everything will be self-contained. We'll have a little wiring bundle to unsnap with a Deutsch connector, 4 bolts to take the tank out itself. Actually 2 bolts, the 2 holding it to the top, and then the saddle mounts, the T-bolt clamps that clamp the back of it there. So getting pretty close. Hopefully within an hour or so we'll be fabbing up some fuel lines, run to the back of the car, and then we'll be able to crank this thing up on pump gas. Well, we are on to our fuel pump mounting now, and we are using a Walbro 450 liter per hour in-tank pump for the street driving portion of our fuel system. And we chose that one just because it's a fairly cheap pump. I've had really good reliability with those, knock on wood. Hopefully I'm not jinxing us for the week, but we will have a spare with us. We like having the street pump inside the fuel so it helps keep it cool. You already get a pre-filter on the inlet of the pump, which is a lot easier to manage than having an external filter that you just have a lot more hose ends to worry about, potential leak points. Well, we don't have any of that, so we're taking the disc that we made that's going to bolt to the top of the tank, and I'm welding a piece of angle that will put the pump down at the very lowest part of the cell, which is actually the front of the cell, but like I mentioned earlier, we're not going to be racing this thing. And with the rake of the car, and we tipped the front of the cell down, the front of the cell is a good 3 inches lower than the rear of the cell. So we shouldn't have any problems with fuel starvation unless we ran the thing almost all the way out of fuel. And we're not going to be racing it anyways with this fuel pump. At least we don't plan to. But that should all work out pretty well. I just used an installation kit from Walbro that's got the nice hard plastic tube that connects the fuel pump up to the disc on the top. Also used one of Holley's 2-wire bulkhead connectors that is gasoline vapor proof, so we won't have any leaks there. And that wraps up our street fuel pump install on our fuel cell. All right, well, we are moving forward on the fuel cell. Almost done. What we've got to do is add a tab to mount our vent to. So that's going to vent and have like a bulkhead fitting on it that'll go through that tab. That is all the welding we have to do there. I'm about to put it back in the car to get a location for our fill cap, which is why this isn't down tight yet. So we're going to bolt this back in. We've drilled a hole through the carbon in the back, and then we are going to transfer that hole all the way into here. And then we'll come back and drill our hole in the carbon a lot bigger so that we can get our hand right through the carbon. And then we'll have to just make a flat piece that'll Zeus fasten down or something to on top of the carbon. So a little bit more work to do. Probably gonna finish some of it after the track just because it's getting late. You can see it's dark outside. I don't know, the door's closed. You can't see it's dark outside. But it's dark outside. It's dark outside. I got a little bit of work to do on this one still. Just plugging some stuff in since we had everything unhooked while we were welding on the car, making a trailer bracket or trailer hitch bracket and a couple other things we were doing in the back of the car. So getting close. Getting close. Well, let's put our front mounts on the fuel cell. And you can kind of see I've got a strap that goes from the lower corner of the fuel cell up to the frame. And now I'm welding some bolts up to the frame that we will slide the strap on the top side. And then it just bolts to the fuel cell at the front corner. And that's between those and the saddle mounts with the T-bolt clamps in the back. That's what holds the fuel cell up in the car. The fuel pressure regulator is mounted to the front of the cell, so there's only one line going forward. And then the relay for the fuel pump is mounted to the back of the cell. So in about 5 minutes, we can take the tank out of the car, assuming it doesn't have any fuel in it. And now I'm drilling a hole in our carbon fiber trunk floor. That hurt a little bit. Nice piece of carbon fiber that we took some time to fit in there all real nice. Take weight out of the back of the car because we needed more weight towards the front of the car to keep it from wheeling. Well, now we're going to be adding a bunch of weight to the back of the car. Probably going to end up adding some weight to the front as well to keep our balance just right, like we've had before. But we had to weld the fill cap on to the top of the tank, and then I'm also welding the vent bracket on the side of the tank, so that's all self-contained to the fuel cell. And basically by doing that, we're just trying to make it where the whole fuel system for the street is basically attached to the fuel tank, except for the main fuel line that runs up to the front of the car. That way it's easy to remove, easy to service, easy, easy, easy. All right, well, the fuel cell is complete. Only thing we have left to do is finish our wires to a Deutsch connector, tighten them up real nice and neat, put them in some heat shrink tubing, except for the main power and ground for the fuel pump. Didn't do those in a heat shrink. Don't know why, but I didn't. So we've got our fuel pressure gauge sensor. Got our fuel pressure sensor plumbed in right here. Obviously that's the return out the bottom of the regulator. And then that's the pressure feed there. This line will go up to the fuel rails. Oh, we have one more fuel line to make. I forgot about that. We got to make the connector across the back of the intake. And cap the other one. Actually, you know what? Wouldn't it be awesome if that other one fit? It's not gonna though. It's not wide enough.
Do we have any more nights?
Getting close. one last quick time lapse just to show you guys the final installation of the cell in the car. Interestingly enough, I did the math on the time lapse, and it takes about 5 minutes to install the fuel cell in the car, get all the brackets hooked up, clip the wiring together, attach the fuel lines to it. Although I did forget to tighten the caps on the front of the cell, and that was our only leak when we go to fire this system up here in just a few minutes. Cool. Just that fast we got a fuel cell. Took all of 10 minutes on the time lapse.
Yeah.
It was a little bit longer in real life.
Too bad life wasn't time lapse. That would be awesome.
If we went as fast as the time lapse?
Yeah.
Whew.
I could get some stuff done.
Yeah, we'd be exhausted early too. There you go. We could just hotwire the fuel pump. Just reach it over here and dang, they're not quite long enough. Just make it run like that. Just touch them to the thing. All right, back to the belly pan. Well, I forgot I had one more time lapse in this video, just showing you the welding process on the belly pan. If you'll notice, I put several clamps on it to hold it down to the bench. That's been my solution for keeping the pan straight when I'm welding it and it not to get all warpy wavy while I'm trying to weld all of the pieces together. It's worked so far for me. Hope it works for you if you're doing stuff like this. I will say that the belly pans are so much easier to work with when it comes to servicing the car, as far as changing the oil, checking the filter, anything we need to do to access the bottom of the engine. It takes 30 seconds to take this pan off. And the diaper on SoccerMom was a solid 15-minute fight to get unhooked and hooked back up when we needed to. So we are definitely glad we made this swap. Well, next day, it's bright again. We're not at the racetrack. So we called the track this morning on our way into work to go get ready to go to the racetrack. Asked them if we could move to Friday, if that was going to be any kind of problem. They said that would actually work better for them. So I called a few people that, the local people that were going to be able to make it. We had some people coming down from sick week. They got held up by the big storm. So they may be able to go Friday now also. And that gives us a chance to go ahead and finish all of the little stuff on SoccerMom. Go ahead and wiring the fuel pump in, which we've already done. We're about to prime it here in just a second. Will's working on the cover for the fuel filler cap in the trunk. And then that gives us time to make sure we got all of Sean's worked out. Yeah, so gonna crank this thing up on pump gas in just a second. See if we can make it happen. All right, we're gonna flush out our fuel lines, which we cleaned them, but we're gonna flush them again just with fuel, plus to move fuel to the front of the engine. Go for it, let's see. I heard it. Blurp. Let's do it one more time. And then I'll put the, ooh, she's blowing some fuel. Okay. So I'll put the cap on it, and then I'll reset the prime. And I guess we'll have to set the pressure from underneath it so we can maybe raise it up enough. And I'm aiming for 43. That's what I set the tune up as, so.
Okay.
Right.
Should work good with those 160s.
Hopefully. A couple more seconds, we'll be ready to crank this thing up. All right, we ready? We're gonna log it. Yeah, it should log over 50 RPM. If it cranks. Took a while to stab at the pump gas tune. This thing's never been on pump gas.
Okay?
Sure. Alright, close. Keep accurate.
We need to do a wide open clear.
Maybe. Let's try it now and we'll see if it
Tries to fire off. Ready?
Yeah. pump gas. So if I didn't make it clear a second ago, I forgot to take out our fuel flow multiplier for when there is low fuel pressure. So we have a fuel flow multiplier that helps it crank because of the mechanical fuel pump. Well, with the mechanical alcohol system having zero fuel pressure, it was basically trying to add 800% to the fuel table, which is why it was so black when it first fired up. But fired up, second kick. All right. Well, pretty successful test drive, I would say. No leaks in the fuel system. Everything ran pretty well. We had a little surgeon we need to dial out in the cruise tune because we just got to do a little work on that part of the tune. But thankfully we had a belly pan instead of the diaper because we scuffed it already. And with a diaper, probably would have ripped it off and put it back into the flex plate, and we would have been in trouble before we even started the event. So we are gonna raise the front end some because it's dragging the fenders. I think these tires must be a little bit taller. So that will also help with dragging the belly pan. But a few things to check and address. Probably gonna change the transmission coolers around. Transmission temperature got to like 200 and we weren't real happy with that, especially because we don't even have the trailer hooked up yet. So we got some stuff to do. That's gonna wrap it up for this video. We appreciate everybody watching. We'll see you guys next time.